All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Legacy Core Class Shockwave. And yeah, this is a pretty cool little figure. We've gotten a few of these kind of smaller versions of classic characters. And what's, kind of strange about him in particular is that, like, compared to some of the other ones like Prime or Starscream, those figures are like a lot more kind of purely based on their G1 show designs, just like, another iteration of G1 designs. Whereas Shockwave is sort of based on his G1 design, but kind of like indirectly, because this figure is like really heavily based on Siege Shockwave specifically, which is kind of interesting. And you can see it a lot here in the alt mode, where he's got the big wings here. He's got the little bridge there that has the little tiny Shockwave eye and the two fins out to the side. He's got these two little missile racks on the back, which are reminiscent of the heels of the robot mode that peek out on Siege Shockwave. So very strange that they've made that choice. It's kind of a neat little reference here, but it is weird. And because he kind of is more referential of Siege Shockwave, he does tend to have like a lot of surface detail, like a lot of the Siege figures have, which in some ways makes him stand out a little bit against some of the other, more G1 cartoon core class figures. I'll show that off a bit more in robot mode so you can see what I mean. But either way, it's an okay little ship mode. There's a lot of stuff about this that I don't really like. I don't like that you can just blatantly see his hands hanging out there from the back, and the fact that they're asymmetrical definitely does not help. When you look at him from the side, he's not really level with himself. And in fact, like if you look at the front here, it actually arcs up a little bit, which is not the best. I don't like that the entire thing is just kind of just like a giant slab of purple that's a little bit indistinct, but it is what it is. It's got a little kickstand back here to help him sit flat, which you can actually fold down further so that he can actually be like a handheld weapon, like, referencing the original Shockwave gun alternate mode. So I'll show that off a bit later. In terms of accessories, he comes with this little strange little radar dish. You can just use this peg down here, and there's a hole in the back here, and you can peg it onto the alt mode. And that's not too bad. I actually like the flash of color that it adds there. It does kind of help break up the sea of purple in the middle there. It's kind of like, I don't know. It feels like something that would be more appropriate for an actually small character rather than a small version of a large character, if that makes sense. Because if you imagine this guy kind of scaled up to Siege Shockwave, that dish would be humongous and I think look kind of silly, but I don't know. That's sort of a weird complaint. But, it looks all right in this mode, although it doesn't really store that well in robot mode. So I think I'm going to tend to put this in a box and just leave it off to the side, even if I do think it improves the look of the alt mode minorly. But either way, in terms of comparisons for a standard core class comparison, 3C's there. Here he is with core class Shockwave. Or Shockwave, Soundwave. He's core class Shockwave. So you can see what the two waves look like with each other there. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Again, you'll see it more in robot mode, but like if you look at all the surface detail on him versus all the like smooth flat edges on him, both are fine. It just makes the two of them kind of look like they don't mesh together, I guess. For another core class Shockwave comparison, here he is with the Bumblebee movie Shockwave from Studio Series. So you can see Shockwave as a jet versus Shockwave as a tank. And then the comparison that I think really matters the most, here he is with Siege Shockwave. So you can see some of the comparisons there. Obviously, the Siege Shockwave doesn't have a dish or anything like that, but these wing sections are clearly reminiscent and designed after these. And then, his little missile launchers or the heels in the back here, all the same stuff. Also, it's kind of funny when comparing these two is like not in this mode, but if you take off the armor here, at least in the front section of Siege Shockwave, one issue I had with this figure too is that actually his front end kind of curves up a little bit too. So that's funny that they both kind of do that, even though the transformations are completely different. Luckily for him, you can just like open this up and rotate the arms around and then close it back up, and that helps a lot. Like it pretty much just solves that problem entirely, whereas he does not really have a fix, unfortunately. But I just thought that was a kind of a funny comparison there. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the alt mode in terms of transformation. Like I said, he does differ quite a bit from Siege Shockwave in that their transformations are nothing alike, because Siege Shockwave kind of turns into a slightly more traditional gun Shockwave mode, but you know, is flipped upside down to make it some sort of spaceship, and then has all the extra armor bits added on to kind of make it the bigger Starcraft, whereas this one has all those bits baked in. There's no removable stuff, I mean, other than the radar dish. But oh, actually, before we go to robot mode, let's show him off as a gun here. And who better to do that with but with Siege Shockwave himself. Let's just adjust the camera here so you can see both of them. So yeah, you just want to take this little kickstand here and fold it down like that to become a handle. And then it's just a, 5mm handle. You can put it in any figure's hand like that. And yeah, that's kind of a cool look. I do like that they really, really successfully color matched the plastic color here. I mean, that could have been very easy, I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of a cool look. It's a little bit unwieldy as a weapon mode, and especially because it's got these big fins on the side. Like you can kind of fold these down, but it does kind of push the arms in a little bit, and that even is a little bit still kind of ridiculous. You could, if you really wanted to, also put the the radar dish on there and have it look really stupid. But I don't know. It's kind of a neat look. I just don't think it's, the most successful thing in the world. I think really it is built a little bit more to be a starship rather than a gun. But anyway, just for what that looks like. But yeah, and then the kind of annoying thing too is when you're going back and you're trying to put this this peg back in, it tends to just activate the transformation. So you have to kind of like get your finger kind of wedged in here up against the bridge section and then unlock it like that. So it's kind of annoying, but it's not the end of the world. But yeah, to continue on with the rest of the transformation, first thing you want to do is just take the front section here and split it. These will be the legs, so they rotate down like that, rotate forward. And then this little waist section here, you actually bring the legs forward, and then it kind of collapses up into the waist just to get those hips a little further up. And then, like I showed off before, like when you untap this section, you want to bring it in so that the bridge kind of sinks into the body, and this will also rotate up the robot mode head. So you want to click that in place and then bring this whole thing onto his back. And then you take these sections with the little fins on them and actually just fold them up onto the backpack just like that. And then the arms just rotate down. And there we have Shockwave in his robot mode. And yeah, it's a pretty good looking robot mode. It's definitely reminiscent of Siege Shockwave, but definitely has its own thing going on too. Some nice detail there. Very nice little head sculpt, very Shockwavy. Shockwave's not a particularly difficult design to do right if you just, put all the parts in the right places. Gotta have the gun arm, gotta have the weird hexagonal chest, and gotta have the weird head. And that pretty much makes for a pretty passable Shockwave. In terms of articulation, the head here is just on a swivel, no ball joint or anything. The shoulders are on ball joints, so they can rotate around. Then it also has that separate transformation hinge that can go up and down like that. He's got a ball joint at the elbows, which afford him a bicep swivel as well. There's no option to give him two hands. The one arm just is a gun arm, and I'm fine with that, but figured I'd mention it. Nothing at the waist. The hips are on ball joints, can go forward and back and out to the side. The knees are on ball joints, which also gives him a thigh swivel. And then when you bend it down, it also has that hinge for transformation. So he's got a nice deep knee bend, as you'd expect, because he's got very hollow lower legs here. And the joints on the legs, all, both knees and both hips are maybe a little bit looser than I'd like. He doesn't have any problems standing or anything like that, but there definitely is a little bit of wiggle when you're messing around with him. But, not the end of the world there. For his weapon, if you can really call it that, you can have him hold it. So he's holding a little radar dish, and I guess that's kind of cool, but there's not really anything else you can do with it. I mean, this peg also works for that, so I guess you could have him hold it like that, Is that better? I don't think so. And there's nothing in terms of storage where there very easily could have been. Like all they would have had to do is just put a little hole in the back of the folding out peg there, and you could just peg it in like that, and it would stick out. But you know, it would be passable. But as it is, really the only way to do it is to like peg it into one of his shoulders, and that's not great. So I'm not in love with that. I don't think it's very good storage. I guess wait, it's got a hole right there. I wonder if you can plug it onto the. Oh yeah, you can do that too. I mean, that's not storage, that's just another way for him to wield it, but that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm not in love with the radar dish, but it's a fairly inoffensive little weapon, so that's okay. I'm all right putting it off to the side. In terms of size comparisons, here he is again with core class Soundwave. So you can see what I'm talking about here is just like, oh yeah, lots of smooth flat edges and then lots of, you know, siege-like surface details. I don't know. Part of me just feels like they don't really follow the same exact aesthetic. Like he doesn't really look like a cartoon Shockwave. He looks like just another new interpretation that is just very heavily based on the Siege one, which is fine. I don't mind that. I think that they still can look good together. But if you're looking for like, you know, this kind of figure, but Shockwave, I don't think it really accomplishes that so much. But, you know, still pretty good looking nonetheless. Here he is again with Core Class Studio Series Shockwave. So you can see, you know, pretty average Core Class height. Obviously, very different shade of purple here, but they look good together. And then last but not least, here he is with Siege Shockwave. So you can see what the two of them look like together. Pretty heavily based on him, I'd say. It's a little bit less apparent in this mode, but you know, you can still see like the shape of the feet, you know, just a lot of the details. Like if you look at the midriff section here, it's kind of similar detailing there. So I don't know, it's still pretty based on him, but definitely differs a bit more in this mode. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. He's a simple little figure. I'm not quite as enamored with him as I was with Soundwave. I don't have any of the other G1 style core class figures. I only get the core class figures that are usually, you know, actually small characters. Soundwave was the only one I wanted to pick up until Shockwave, and he's not as good as Soundwave. He's okay. I would say he's not particularly special, but he's a very passable little Shockwave, and I guess that's good enough. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Core Class Shockwave. Oh, there he goes.